Hi everyone, this is Justin Pate from the Wrap Institute, and welcome to part 2 of our free series that we're calling Wrapping in Place. Right now, a lot of us have to shelter in place right now to keep ourselves safe as well as our community. What that means is a lot of time at home. And so we've geared this series towards people who have never picked up a squeegee before, people who already know how to wrap so you can kind of fine-tune your skills before you have to go back to work in a couple weeks. And also, it's have fun with family members. So a lot of kids are home from school, and if you're a wrapper, you can actually incorporate these videos and get the family involved, which can be a lot of fun. What we're going to be wrapping today is a laptop. In part 1, we actually wrapped this coffee cup. And what was really interesting about wrapping this coffee cup, other than getting those skills of how to wrap, is I've been drinking coffee out of this cup for the last couple of days, and weirdest thing, a wrapped coffee cup makes the coffee taste better. It's the weirdest thing. We haven't changed our coffee or the coffee maker, but it tastes so cool. So imagine if a wrapped coffee cup makes your coffee taste better, what does a wrapped laptop do? I think it's going to make my computer go faster. We'll see. But that being said, we'll see in a second. We're going to get into wrapping a laptop. And what is cool about wrapping a laptop? A lot of things. If you're a beginner and never learned how to wrap, you're going to learn really good fundamental skills in how to cut, how to squeegee, but also how to cut out something centered and straight and make this straight on top, because this is a multiple piece panel. We've got a blue piece and a wood piece that goes on top. If you already have some skills, you're going to learn kind of how to create that good workflow. And if you're family members, you can actually see who comes up with the coolest laptop. So you say, okay, we're going to start, we're going to watch this video. Everyone wraps their laptop, and whoever has the coolest laptop does not have to do laundry or dishes for a week. Oh, how cool is that? All right, so that's what we're going to do in part 2 of this series. And again, for me, it's educational and a lot of fun. Let's get to it. So the Wrap Institute has almost 1,900 videos that covers everything from wrapping walls, floors, cars, planes, boats, PPF, tint. And even though those are a wide variety of objects to wrap, what we do on the Wrap Institute, we try to keep everything super simple and focused. And that's the idea of keeping everything into segments of 3, especially when you wrap. And that is prep, install, and post. So when you wrap anything, you always begin, obviously, with prep. So if you're wrapping a laptop, what is the prep? First and foremost, candy, especially when you're wrapping in place in your home, hanging out, and especially if you're wrapping in place and working with family, kids, and stuff like that. So have some candy on hand, coffee, drinks, whatever. All about having fun. So then obviously you want to get your tools together. So what tools do you need to wrap a laptop? Today we're going to be using a knife. Okay, you want a light duty click off blade. So you got that. Squeegee with a buffer. And again, even if, like I say, you're a beginner and you're working from home and you don't have wrap tools, you can use, let's say, a squeegee and a microfiber towel. So that's, or not a squeegee, let's say a credit card and microfiber towel. If you don't have a knife like this, you can use, let's say, sharp scissors. That's an option for that. Little masking tape for today. You want a straight edge or a ruler in this case. Tape measure. Cleaner. Today we're going to use a microfiber towel and vinegar. And you also want something to click your blades into so everything's super safe. You also want a marker, and I think that's about it for today in terms of laptops. So not super crazy, expensive tools, just pretty straightforward. So once you have your tools ready, obviously we get into cleaning. What's the most important part is making sure it's super clean, but obviously it's a laptop. So I don't want to go spraying directly onto the laptop itself, because then that moisture might get into the keyboard and maybe ruin the computer itself. So you want to be super, super smart about that. So in this case right now, I'm actually going to kind of fold it this way. So it's very straightforward. Spray it off onto the microfiber towel. And what I'm cleaning with, and you can clean with, standard cleaners, let's say Windex. You can use isopropyl alcohol if you want, mixed with water. But today I'm using vinegar. Why I like vinegar, and I said it in the first video of this series, is vinegar has naturally deionizes the surface, plus it's non-toxic. A lot of people don't like the smell, but for me I like it because it's a super effective cleaner. So, as I mentioned in the intro right now, this is going to be a 2-layer laptop. So the first layer I'm going to be putting down is a coat of blue, and then I'm going to put wood on top. So once I've cleaned, and I make sure it's super, super clean, a lot of grease builds up on the laptop, focus on the edges, make sure they're nice and clean. Once that's set now, if you've never wrapped before, I think it's really, really important to practice cutting before you wrap, okay? And the reason why is that oftentimes the wrapping part is easy. The material today is getting easier and easier to put on. So you wrap it and you think, wow, that was super easy. How hard can that be? And then you get to cutting and you're like, oh, it's actually pretty hard. So without anything on, I think it's always a good idea to take your blade in this case, or if you're using scissors, you can always use scissors and cut as well. But let's say you're using a knife. What's the secret? So you have your blade, And you always never want your blade sticking out too far, because if it sticks out too far, you might be cutting what's underneath, and plus it drags and slows the blade down. So you always want your blade out, we call it in clicks. So right now it's at 1 click, 2 click, 3 click. And how you know clicks is just here by the sound. So I generally like it out 2 clicks, super safe. And in this case now, you just want to practice. You always want the side of your blade pushing against what you're wrapping. So I push against the computer, and then because I like use a plastic knife, I can actually stick the knife against the computer as well. So I push towards the computer with the blade, towards the computer with my knife, and then I run it along. And I try to keep my knife at a 45-degree angle. So with nothing on it, you want to get that good feel. If you feel like your knife is coming off, that means you're not pressing to the computer enough. And if you feel like your blade's coming up, you're not pressing down enough. So you want to push to and down. And then you always want to practice on corners. Corners are like driving. You always want to kind of slow down for corners and make sure your knife stays on that corner. You can see how easily it kind of jumps off. So I want to practice that again. So I come down, slow down on the corner. You can see this corner's kind of beat up a little bit. And then I speed up on the straight. Cool. So once you get the practice and you feel like your cutting skills are good, then you can get to wrapping. So again, always practice your cutting before you start to wrap. So now, what I like about the Wrap in Place series is that we can use scraps. So I have this piece right now, but it's too big. Right now I can feel through here, and I got extra material here, which left and right, right is good, top to bottom is good, but here I got a lot of extra material. So what you can do now is you can take scissors and you can make it a little smaller. And so the reason why you always like to make the panel a little smaller just makes it easier to apply. If you have too much material now, it can pick up stuff. Okay, what you also have to think about is this is a scrap. So it's been laying around the shop or sitting on the couch in this case. So what it can pick up is dirt. So I see some dirt right there. So what I highly recommend is with a microfiber towel, make sure you wipe the backing paper off because you don't want any dirt to get underneath the material. So once I wipe this off so it's clean, I flip it up and I wipe the computer one more time. And I also wipe around the computer a little bit. Cool. Once that's nice and clean, then I'm ready to wrap. Let's get to do it. So in this case now, all right, I'm just going to take the material off and wrap. So that's the easy part. So what you can do now is you take the backing paper off a little bit, and I take it off just about halfway. I want to leave the backing paper on so it has a nice body. And then I'm going to take the material now and just kind of lay it on top like that. And if I lay it on top and it looks pretty smooth, I can take my squeegee now and I can just lock it in place. So I squeegee this way, and this is called a hinge, because by squeegeeing now, it is locked the panel in place. It won't move. So I can squeegee towards the backing paper, and I just do overlapping squeegee strokes. And what's really important, especially when you're wrapping on a laptop right now, is I don't want to squeegee too hard. If I squeegee really hard right now, obviously I'm going to hurt the computer. So you just want to go back and forth, and I squeegee nice and mellow. And notice that with my free hand right now, I'm holding the backing paper, and it keeps the material away. So I don't take the backing paper entirely off. Squeegee back and forth, and then right when I get to the edge, I pull the backing paper away, and voila. All right. So then what I want to do is I want to go around the edge and make sure everything's down nice and tight. So I run my finger on the edge, and I run it just right there. So this is part of good habits. And so on the Wrap Institute, I talk a lot about having good habits. And one of the good habits is once you've squeegeed everything on, I got to squeegee this side down nice and clean, is that you want to run your finger around a 360 around whatever you're wrapping. So I started here and I did a loop. And what that does is it sets up nice even tension on the edges. But this is a laptop right now, and you can see on the corners now it's still a little loose. So what I failed to mention earlier in terms of tool, and this is not necessarily a tool, I stole it from my wife and daughter, is it's a hair dryer. Okay, and I think a hair dryer is a nice good heat source to have in your house if you're wrapping. Heat gun, if you have that, it's a little too hot, can damage your furniture, and is dangerous if you're working around kids. So here I'm going to take the hair dryer, get it nice and hot, and I'm just going to go around the edge. And then I'm going to go over the computer. If I go over the computer, what that does is it shows me if there's any air underneath. So I saw a little bit of air, so I'm going to double squeegee. And again, not pressing too hard, but just enough. And now it's on. And you tell that that's pretty easy and straightforward, especially today's material is nice and it slides nice and good, doesn't bite too hard. So now I'm ready to cut everything out. So how do I cut everything out is I'm going to take my safety box. So this is a special box. It has a little magnet in here so that the blades sneak down at the bottom. You can hear the blades now, but I can take this now and it holds the blades at the base. And then I take my blade and I always click it. And the reason why you want to click your blade is so it's extra sharp. It's great cuts. And now it's all about getting that technique of cutting, but also good body position right now. So I'm actually going to sit up on my knees right now, run my finger here. And I think a good tip right now is to get the position where I usually like to start like down here, make the long run, and then take the corner, stop, and then rotate it. I think those are a really good tip for laptops. So the trick right now is the material is nice and loose. It's hanging down. But if it's loose right now and I go to cut, the material might get jagged. So my free hand now, this hand, is going to pull the material tight, and it's going to pull away as I cut in the opposite direction. So I pull this way, and you can see this wrinkle right here when I pull. That tells me I'm pulling away, and that creates nice tension. Once I get to here, I'm going to shift my free hand, and then I'm going to slow down on the corner like I did before. Again, this corner is a little beat up, so I slow down right there, and then I'm going to speed up on the straight. And now I feel like I'm cutting in an awkward body position. You can see my arm and my hand getting kind of weird right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the laptop so it's in a more comfortable position right to there. Ah, that feels better. So I'm going to come back to my cut. And then I'm going to come around this side, slow down in the corner. And then I'm going to speed up on the straight. Stop on the corner. It feels like an awkward position. I'm going to rotate the laptop now, and I got two corners coming up. Now I feel like I'm in a good position. Again, my free hand's pulling away. I slow down on the corner and speed up on the flat, just like driving. Hopefully, like driving. If you drive and you slow down in the corners, that's good. Awkward position. I rotate it one more time and down. And notice I'm not wrapping too far behind the edge of this laptop. It's got a very steep drop off. So if I cut it flush to the surface right now, it's nice and clean and I don't overstretch the material. So now that everything's cut away, bam. And always when you're done cutting, very good tip is to retract your blade. Never leave your blade out on the table like this, because if you do, you might grab it. Again, especially if you're working, again, the whole point of the Wrap and Place series is maybe you're working with your kids, so retract your blade. So then what you want to do is always double check that your cut is nice and clean. Very important for laptops right now, because sometimes the edge of a laptop is beveled in a little bit. So you always want to make sure it's nice and flush. So I'm going to click my blade one more time, and then I'm going to do a loop. So I start here now, and I'm going to angle it in, and I'm just going to kind of shave it up. And you can see that little bit of material popping out right now. So again, I slow down on this corner. Again, this corner is a little junky because it got damage right there. So by angling my blade in, you can see that little bit of material shaving off right there. So I slow down on this corner right to here. And again, I'll show you what I'm cutting off right now. Just that little bit. But this actually is making it sit nice and flush to the surface. So you always want to come back and give the edge of your laptop almost like a shave right now. So I rotate it. And again, just like how I set up the edges right now, you want to do the same with your blade. I'm doing a 360, and this is just quality control, getting that good flow, getting everything down nice and tight. And if I don't trim this off right now, the chance of this edge getting picked up while I'm picking up the computer, opening it and stuff like that is really high. So shaving this off is really critical. So it's all about, again, doing those steps, being super focused. Once everything's cut now, I feel like everything's down nice and clean. So if you want just a blue laptop, bam, you got a blue laptop. I like that. Awesome. So again, oftentimes, especially if you're a beginner or if you just have one material in the house, now very quickly with the right setup, run my finger, make sure everything's set, and you got a blue laptop. Super cool. But I always like customization. That's the great thing about wrapping, is you can take something just standard like this, and then you can make it super cool and custom. And let's get to that next, because for me, that's the fun part of wrapping. So for right now, I'm gonna set this right here. I feel like it's good. All the edges are set. And I'm gonna take the computer and drop it here. Now earlier, what I did is I have extra material. And again, using scraps. So with the coffee cup right here, I wrapped it with a full print film. And I could do the same with the laptop right now. But what I did is when I went through my scrap pile, I found some old wood grain film, okay? And actually wrapped a lot of the elements in my house with this material. And this is what's called Dino. It's an interior film, super cool, and actually looks and feels like wood. Awesome, so I'm gonna put that on my computer. So the idea right now is what I wanna do, and the idea that I had for this was, I noticed that on a lot of Apple computers, or on all Apple computers, is they have the Apple logo there. So I thought it would be cool if I made a cutout of the wood in a circle shape and then put a strip of wood right on top. And I actually got an approval from my daughter for that. So that means it's going to be extra, extra cool. So what I like about this now is you're going to learn how to create a nice, good circle shape and make it nice and symmetrical and a straight line of wood. And this is really good for beginner installers. Notice that because it's a scrap right now, I notice that it keeps on folding out itself like that. So one way to make it set is to take a hard object or a heavy object and place it here. So now I can focus on this area here. Awesome. So what you want to do now is I want to create that circle right over the Apple logo. How do I do that so it fits perfectly on a strip that it works left to right, top to bottom? Well, a good way to do that is this. What I'm going to do now is do two things. I'm going to measure the coffee cup. In this case, I'm going to use the back of the coffee cup here, the width. So I'm going to measure how wide it is. And in this case, I see that it is 5 centimeters. So it's 5 centimeters side to side. That's the circumference. So now what I want to do here is I've noticed that you want to use the backing paper as much as you can as a tool. So in this case, I don't want to measure the squares. I know that the squares are, if I go from side to side here, the squares are 10 centimeters wide. And these are measured out 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So now this is my guide. It's a nice, easy shortcut right now. So because I know the width of the bottom of the cup is 5 centimeters, and I want to make sure I center it exactly in that square, what I'm going to do now is this. I'm going to go from the 5th segment of each section. So watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll do this here, and I do the same. Bam. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my tape measure now, and I'm going to measure 2.5 from either side. So I'm going to go from the middle right to here, side to side. This is my 10, and I'm going to measure 2.5 and 2.5. So I got that right there, left to right, and I'll do the same thing here. So I measure from side to side, so I got the 10, so I'll do 2.5 and 2.5. So this now means that when I go to take the bottom of the cup right here, and I place it here, it should fit right by those dots. So that means when I go to make the circle cut right now, and when I do the straight edge, this is going to be perfectly centered. So I got the dot there, I got the dot on the back, I got the dot left to right, and I feel like I'm in the exact spot that I need to. So now I'm going to circle it. So I take my dry erase marker, and everyone has these in their house. So I make a circle, and I make sure that everything lines up nice and straightforward. So I'm going to come through here, get the angle, and just make sure it fits a nice, perfect circle. Okay, and I could cut around the cup right now, but I feel like going around the actual marker right now is safer and it's easier for me to use my knife. So I can set this aside now. So now I have my exact center placement and I got the circle. So I'm ready to rock and roll. So once I have this set, I'm gonna put the coffee cup here. And what you have to appreciate when you're wrapping right now is you always want to click your blade a lot. So even though I'm wrapping just a laptop, I've already clicked it twice and I'm going to go for a third time. You always want to make sure it's extra, extra sharp. So now I want to make this super symmetrical. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start on the inside of the blue and I'm just going to do a loop. So the idea is I want, when I'm done, I'll have a straight line of wood with a circle right over the Apple logo. So I'm going super slow. And notice now, I'm actually changing my body position. So I'm standing up. And the reason why, just like I cut on the edge of the laptop right now, is that I want to make sure that I'm in a comfortable position. Right here, I feel like I'm cutting in an awkward position. So I switch back to this side and I cut here. So I keep my blade angle at a 90-degree angle and I make my loop. And remember what I talked about earlier. The idea of the Wrap Institute now is to keep it simple and have focus. Because if you have focus right now, especially when you cut off stuff like this, then you're going to have good quality. So I can pull it right here, pull it back to here, and I see I'm super careful when I picked it up because it didn't quite cut all the way. So I'm going to come back here, and I'm just going to, with a light touch, finish it off right on the back side here, and bam. Cool. So now I have my perfect circle. So now that I have this set now, okay, so this is my focus point, is getting that circle right above the Apple logo. But now I want to make sure I create a straight line of wood that goes from side to side. So I'm going to pull this aside for now, and you could use a cutting board, or in this case, because I'm working from home, I'm going to use a I'm going to use the cutting board from the kitchen. All right. So the idea right now is you can do a couple things. I can make the stripe this wide, and I could run along this line right here that's naturally in it, or I can make it a little wider, whatever floats your boat. So in this case, I'm going to make it a little wider. So I'm going to go from this edge side to side. So I take my straight edge right now, and I'm going to line it up right to the marker. So this is 1 centimeter past the line on the back. So I know that for sure it's going to be straight. So I line it up, get it from, measure from side to side. Looks really good right there. So I'm going to measure, take my blade and cut right along to there. And what I like to do here is I like to angle it up, pull this aside, all right? So the reason why I like to angle away right here is that when I pick back up here now, it's an easy reference point so that I could line the backside up, come back to this line right to there, make sure that lines up nice and clean, and then I'm going to continue my cut. So I extend my blade, finish my cut, and bam. So once I cut this out, I can flip it to the other side and do the same. So I'm going to start at the 1 centimeter point, go to the 1 centimeter point, make sure it's lined up. And if you watch me do the coffee cup in part 1 of this series, notice that my hand on top of this, on the straight edge right now, is wide. So this hand is nice and wide so it doesn't shift. Throw that down, come back and do centimeter point to centimeter point. So I got to set up here, got to set up to here, and make my cut. Cool. Pull this aside, and now I got my straight edge, and I'm ready to put this on top of the laptop, which is super cool. So now you learned how to make something straight by using the backing paper liner grid, which is super easy, and you can make it straight on top here. So now we're ready to rock and roll, and I'm going to show you how to put it on top, centered and straight on the laptop, and once you do that, you're going to have a cool laptop. Let's get to it. So now we're ready to put the wood strip on, and the wood strip requires a little different prep, install, post logic, because with the blue it was about, you know, getting it clean and then just kind of getting it on and then squeegeeing and finishing the edges just like I showed you. But with the wood it's different because now we have to make the wood symmetrical. So what's the best way to do that? So the first step before we do anything though, because we're in the prep phase, is cleaning. So I spray just a little bit, it's still wet, make sure it's nice and clean here. So I just go over it, make sure the edges are nice and dust-free, and the panel. So I kind of come up here and give it a nice wipe down, taking off any sneaky dirt. Cool. Once this is set now, what's very important is just really getting this placement critical. So what I'm going to do now is come back with a marker right now, and you always have different dry erase markers because here this is blue and I marked it on the laptop because it was gray, but now the laptop is blue. I can't use blue on blue, hard to see, so now I'm going to switch it to red. So what I want to do now is this. This is a good tip, really good for beginners. I'm going to measure the width right now. I'm going to go back to centimeters, and if I measure from here side to side, it's about, I would say it's 12, just under, almost 13, but just a little bit over 12 and a half. So it's 12 and a half straight. So I know that if the stripe is 12 and a half, and then I come here now, and it's 24 and a half, that tells me now, so it's 12, so I need to do 11. So what I want to do now is come from here. That gives me 11. So basically right now, so if I have 24 and a half right now, and I'm minus 12 and a half, that gives me 12. So therefore, what I want to do is I want to make sure that here I mark it at 6. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So from here I measure 6, and I come back over here and do the same. So I set it to here, I mark it 6, and then I'll measure from this side, pull it up across, and I generally try to like to do dot to dot. So what this is doing is giving me that instant symmetry for the stripe, so I don't have to struggle and go back and forth figuring it out. So I'm getting ahead of the curve right here. Now what I also want to do now is this, right? The width of this is 5. So I know that it's 5, and I want to come here and make sure that I get to the point that it looks pretty good side to side. So I don't want it too far to the left, too far to the right. So right here it looks pretty good here. So I'm going to mark just inside the 5 on either side. So this is my eyeball, so I can get everything centered and straight super quickly. So I got the markers here tagged, I got the center point tagged, and now I'm ready to put the piece on. So I'm going to put my marker back, got my masking tape, and I always like to have masking tape holders right where the markers are. So I place it here, place it here, double check for dust. I see a little bit of dust build up. Then I come back in with this piece now, and I can, I can line this piece up to the dots. So I got it lining up to the dots at the bottom and the top. So I have the dots here, here, and I see the dots are really symmetrical right here. I see I want to shift it over just a kiss, double check that it's on a line, and I can take my masking tape now, mark it to there, mark it to here, come back up to this marker, mark it to here, and mark it to here. Cool. So it's a really quick way of getting symmetry. Then I double check the circle and I feel like it's a little too low at the top right here. So I'm actually going to pick this up. I still got my markers, and it was almost like a, I don't know, like a ½ centimeter too low. Not a ½ centimeter, just a little bit. So I want to shift it up just a little bit, find the dots, lock it right to there, take it back down, lock it to the top here, and now I'm centered and straight right on the circle. So I got my markers, center, super easy, straightforward. So once I have this down now, how do I make sure that it stays in that position? By creating a hinge with masking tape. I always like to have my hinges right in the middle, 50-50 point. When you wrap the coffee cup, if you watch part 1 of this series, I made the 50-50 point here right in the middle, and I think I'm going to do the exact same thing here. So I'm going to take my masking tape, place it onto here, from side to side, and you always want to do multiple pieces of masking tape. So what this masking tape is, like I said with a coffee cup, is holding it like the hinge on a door. So once I pick this up, I can pull these away, put this aside, and then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to pull the backing paper off. Nice, easy, and straightforward. So I pull it to here, and I'm going to cut it away. You can cut it away with your knife, but there's a good chance that I might cut the computer. So I think it's always a good idea to cut it with scissors. So I cut it with scissors here. All right. And sometimes when you cut, you see little pieces of dust that build up from the backing paper. So I come back here with a microfiber towel, wipe it down, and then what I'm going to do now is pick this up and simply squeegee to the edge. Double tap a squeegee here, yummy. Then I'm going to pull the masking tape away. Then I'm going to flip it over by removing the masking tape. I flip it over this way. I take the backing paper off because it's a nice stiff film. Before I put it down, always good habits, I want to check for dust. I see a little speck of backing paper right here. So sometimes you can take your backing paper right there and pull it aside. See how it jumps on there? So I'm going to flick it off right to almost, and because I don't want to touch it directly, so I pull it off there. Bam. So once I have this set now, I'm going to pull this across, make sure it goes nice and flat, hits the marker, and once it goes nice and flat, I can squeegee. Super simple. Very easy. So the stripe is actually nice and easy and straightforward, and what I love about it is customizing. So once it's on right now, I don't have to cut anywhere around the Apple emblem right now, but I do have to cut the side. And every time before you cut, what is the secret? Clicking. So now, just like when I cut the blue, I'm going to run my finger on the edge, I'm going to hold the material away, and I'm going to angle my blade in, and I cut. And then I always make sure I come back in and see if I need to shave it. Just a little bit came off. Cool. Once this is done, run my finger, pick the material up, and I cut. Super short blade. Once I make this cut, come back in and double click or double cut to make sure it's nice and shaved, and cool. So with the top piece, didn't have to do the corners. Very easy and straightforward. Now I got that customization, but it was all about getting that precise cut, getting the markers ahead of time so it lines up, creating a hinge, and bam, and it's all about using scraps. So now I got a cool blue custom computer with blue backdrop, blue cutout, and I got the wood on top, which is super awesome, all by using scraps. So again, everyone has a computer, like a MacBook or whatever, and they all look the same, and in just a matter of minutes, by taking scraps and by wrapping in place, I can create a super cool computer like this that can be a lot of fun and get a lot of people saying, whoa, that's a cool computer. Awesome stuff. And I guess the power of wrap. So again, this is part 2 of the Wrapping in Place series. And again, I hope this is a lot of fun. If you're a beginner, I hope you learned a lot. If you're a kid who's wrapping with their father or your mother and stuff like that, hope this was a lot of fun. And I hope this just builds your skills and gets you introduced into wrapping, which can be super cool. So if you like wrapping a laptop, imagine how cool it is to wrap a car. And all those videos are on the Wrap Institute. So I definitely recommend checking those out. So hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Justin Pate.